Hello, welcome back. Slightly different setup because we're reading today, if you didn't already know from the title of the video. Anyway, I hate intros. I'll just keep it really brief. I did a poll on Instagram, which book should we read through? Horus Heresy won by 1%, shortly, swiftly, who knows, something followed by The Hobbit. So the way I'm going to do it is, because it's going to take us 10,000 years to get through the Horus Heresy series, we'll do Horus Heresy 1 week, Hobbit the next week. And because this one won, this is the first one. So we're going to start from the very beginning, obviously. I'm not going to turn halfway through the book. I'm not that much of a psycho. Apologies in advance as well if audio quality is not as good as it normally is. Have I misplaced my microphone? Maybe. Anyway, it will show up, I'm sure. Let's go. Horus Rising. The Horus Heresy. It is a time of legend. Mighty heroes battle for the right to rule the galaxy. The vast armies of the Emperor of Earth have conquered the galaxy in a great crusade. The alien races have been smashed by the Emperor's elite warriors and wiped from the face of history. The dawn of a new age of supremacy for humanity beckons. Gleaming citadels of marble and gold celebrate the many victories of the Emperor. Triumphs are raised on a million worlds to record the epic deeds of his most powerful and deadly warriors. First and foremost amongst these are the Primarchs, super-heroic beings who have led the Emperor's armies of space marines in victory after victory. They are unstoppable and magnificent, the pinnacle of the Emperor's genetic experimentation. The Space Marines are the mightiest human warriors the galaxy has ever known, each capable of besting 100 normal men or more in combat. Organized into vast armies of tens of thousands, called legions, the Space Marines and their Primarch leaders conquer the galaxy in the name of the Emperor. Chief amongst the Primarchs is Horus, called the Glorious, the brightest star, favourite of the Emperor, and like a son unto him. He is the War Master, the Commander-in-Chief of the Emperor's military might, subjugator of 1,000 worlds and conqueror of the galaxy. He is a warrior without peer, a diplomat supreme. Horus is a star ascendant, but how much further can a star rise before it falls? That was dramatic because my screen turned off and the lighting probably went a little bit like, did the lighting change? Probably not. Anyway, I need it on for extra lighting because I also left my light downstairs and can't be bothered to go and get it. So let's go, shall we? Part 1, The Deceived. Blood from misunderstanding, our brethren in ignorance. The Emperor dies. Dun dun dun. Sorry. I was there, he would say afterwards, until afterwards became a time quite devoid of laughter. I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor. It was a delicious conceit, and his comrades would chuckle at the sheer treason of it. The story was a good one. Torgadon would usually be the one to cajole him into telling it, for Torgadon was the joker, a man of mighty laughter and idiot tricks, and Loken would tell it again, a tale rehearsed through so many retellings it almost told itself. Loken was always careful to make sure his audience properly understood the irony in his story. It was likely that he felt some shame about his complicity in the matter itself, for it was a case of blood spilled from misunderstanding. There was a great tragedy implicit in the tale of the Emperor's murder, a tragedy that Loken always wanted his listeners to appreciate. But the death of Sejanus was usually all that fixed their attentions. That and the punchline. It had been, as far as the warp-dilated horologs could attest, the 203rd year of the Great Crusade. Loken always set his story in its proper time and place. The commander had been War Master for about a year, since the triumphant conclusion of the Ulanor campaign, and he was anxious to prove his newfound status, particularly in the eyes of his brothers. War Master. Such a title. The fit was still new and unnatural, not yet worn in. It was a strange time to be abroad amongst stars. They had been doing what they had been doing for 2 centuries, and now it felt unfamiliar. It was a start of things, and an ending too. The ship of the 63rd expedition came upon the Imperium by chance. A sudden, etheric storm, later declared providential by Malachus, forced a route alteration, and they translated into the edges of a system comprising of 9 worlds. 9 worlds circling a yellow sun, detecting the shoal of rugged expedition warships on station at the outsystem edges. The Emperor first demanded to know their occupation and agenda, then he painstakingly corrected what he saw as the multifarious errors in their response. Then he demanded fealty. He was, he explained, the Emperor of mankind. He had stoically shepherded his people through the miserable epoch of war storms, through the age of strife, staunchly maintaining the rule and law of man. This had been expected of him, he declared. He had kept the flame of human culture alight through the aching isolation of old night. He had sustained this precious, vital fragment and kept it intact until such time as the scattered diaspora of humanity re-established contact. That's helpful. Somebody was reversing outside. He rejoiced that such a time was now at hand. His soul leapt to see the orphan ships returning to the heart of the Imperium. Everything was ready and waiting. Everything had been preserved. The orphans would be embraced to his bosom, and then the great scheme of rebuilding would begin, and the Imperium of mankind would stretch itself out again across the stars, as it was its birthright. As soon as they showed him proper fealty as Emperor of mankind, the commander, quite entertained by all accounts, sent Hastur Sejanus to meet the emperor and deliver greeting. Sejanus was the commander's favourite, not as proud or irascible as Abaddon, nor as ruthless, nor even as solid and venerable as Cruz. Sejanus was the perfect captain, tempered evenly in all respects, a warrior and a diplomat in equal measure. Sejanus's martial record, second only to Abaddon's, was easily forgotten when in company with the man himself. A beautiful man, Loken would say, building his tale, a beautiful man adored by all. No finer figure in plate than Hastur Sejanus, that he is remembered and his deeds celebrated, even here amongst us, speaks of Sejanus's qualities, the noblest hero of the great crusade. That was how Loken would describe him to the Easter. To the eager listeners, in future times he will be recalled with such fondness that men will name their sons after him. Sejanus, with a squad of his finest warriors from the 4th Company, travelled in system in a gilded barge and was received by audience by the emperor at his palace on the 3rd planet. And killed, murdered, hacked down on the onyx floor of the palace even as he stood before the emperor's golden throne, Sejanus and his glory squad. And the rest, all slaughtered by the emperor's elite guard and the so-called invisibles. Apparently, Sejanus had not offered the correct fealty. Indelicately, he had suggested there might actually be another emperor. The commander's grief was absolute. He had loved Sejanus like a son. They had warred side by side to effect compliance on 100 worlds. But the commander, always sanguine and wise in such matters, told his signalman to offer the emperor another chance. The commander detested resorting to war and always sought alternative paths away from violence where such were workable. This was a mistake. He reasoned, a terrible, terrible mistake. Peace could be salvaged. This emperor could be made to understand. It was about then, Loken liked to add, that a suggestion of quote marks began to appear around the emperor's name. It was determined that a second embassy would be dispatched. Malachus volunteered at once. The commander agreed but ordered the spear tip forward into assault range. The intent was clear. One hand extended open in peace, the other held ready as a fist. If the second embassy failed or was similarly met with violence, then the first would already be in position to strike. That sombre day, Loken said, the honour of the spear tip had fallen, but the customary drawing of lots to the strengths of Abaddon, Torgadon, little Horus, Aximond, and himself At the order, battle musters began. The ships of the spear tip slipped forward, running under obscurement. On board, stormbirds were hauled into their launch carriages. Weapons were issued and certified. Oaths of moment were sworn and witnessed. Armour was machined into place around the anointed bodies of the chosen. In silence, tensed and ready to be unleashed, the spear tip watched as the shuttle convoy, bearing Malachurst and his envoys, arced down towards the third planet. Surface batteries smashed them out of the heavens as the burning scads of debris from Malachurst's Felicia billowed away into the atmosphere. The Emperor's fleet elements rose up out of the oceans, out of the high cloud, out of the gravity wells of nearby moons. 600 warships revealed and armed for war. Abaddon broke obscurement and made a final personal plea to the Emperor, beseeching him to see sense. The warships began to fire on Abaddon's spear tip. "My commander," Abaddon relayed to the heart of the waiting fleet, "there is no dealing here. This fool impostor will not listen." And the commander replied, "Illuminate him, my son, but spare all you can. That order notwithstanding, avenge the blood of my noble Sejanus, decimate this emperor's elite murderers, and bring the impostor to me." And so, Loken would sigh, we made our war upon our brethren, so lost in ignorance. It was late evening, but the sky was saturated with light. The phototropic towers of the high city, built to turn and follow the sun with their windows during the day, shifted uneasily at the pulsating radiance in the heavens. Spectral shapes swam high in the upper atmosphere, ships engaging in a swirling mass, charting brief, nonsensical zodiacs as with the beams of their battery weapons. At ground level, around the wide basalt platforms that formed the skirts of the palace, gunfire streamed through the air like horizontal rain, hosing coils of tracer fire that dipped and slithered heavy like snakes. Die-straight zips of energy that vanished as fast as they appeared, and flurries of bolt shells like blizzarding hail. Down stormbirds, many of them crippled and burning, littered 20 square kilometres of the landscape. Black humanoid figures paced slowly in across the limits of the palace sprawl. They were shaped like armoured men, and they trudged like men, but they were giants, each 140 metres tall. The Mechanicum had deployed a half dozen of its Titan war engines. Around the Titan's soot-black ankles, troops flooded forward in a breaking wave 3 kilometres wide. The lunar wolves surged like the surf of the wave, thousands of gleaming white figures bobbing and running forward across the skirts' platforms, detonations bursting among them, lifting rippling fireballs and trees of dark brown smoke. Each blast judded the ground with a gritty thump and showered dirt as an aftercause. Assault craft swept in over their heads low, between the shambling frames of the wide-spaced Titans, fanning the slowly lifting smoke clouds into sudden, energetic voices. Every Astartes helmet was filled with vox chatter, snapping voices, chopping back and forth their tonal edges, roughened by the transmission quality. It was Loken's first taste of mass war since Ulanor. 10th Company's first taste, too. There had been skirmishes and scraps, but nothing testing. Loken was glad to see that his cohort hadn't grown rusty. The unapologetic regimen of live drills and punishing exercises he'd maintained had kept them whetted, as sharp and serious as the terms of the oaths of moment they had taken just hours before. Ulanor had been glorious, a hard and stinting slog to dislodge and overthrow a bestial empire. The greenskin had been a pernicious and resilient foe, but they had broken the back and kicked over the embers of the revel fires. The commander had won the field through the employment of his favourite practised strategy, the spear-tip thrust to tear out the throat. Ignoring the greenskin masses, which had outnumbered the Crusaders 5-1, the commander had struck directly at the Overlord and his command coterie, leaving the enemy headless and without direction. The same philosophy operated here: tear out the throat and let the body spasm and die. Loken and his men, and the war engines that supported them, were the edge of the blade unsheathed for that purpose. But this was not like Ulanor at all. No thickets of mud and clay-built ramparts, no ramshackle fortresses or bare metal and wire, no black powder, airbursts or howling or ogre foes. This was not a barbaric brawl determined by blades and upper body strength. This was modern warfare in a civilized place. This was man against man. Inside the monolithic precincts of a cultured people, the enemy possessed ordnance and firearms, every bit the technological match of the Legion, and the skill and training to use them. Through the green imaging of his visor, Loken saw armoured men with energy weapons ranged against them in the lower courses of the palace. He saw tracked weaponed carriages, automated artillery, nests of 4 or even 8 automatic cannons shackled together on cart platforms that lumbered towards the hydraulic legs. Not like Ulanor at all. This had been an ordeal. This would be a test. Equal against equal, like against like, except that for all its martial technologies, the enemy lacked one essential quality, and that quality was locked within each and every case of power armor. The genetically enhanced flesh and blood of the Imperial Astartes, modified, refined, post-human, the Astartes were superior to anything they had met or would ever meet. Nothing, no fighting force in the galaxy could ever hope to match the legions unless the stars went out and madness ruled and lawful sense turned upside down. For the only thing that can beat an Astartes is another Astartes, and they had all laughed at that statement. The impossible was nothing to be scared of. The enemy, their armour and a polished magenta trimmed in silver, as Loken later discovered when he viewed them with his helmet off, firmly held the induction gates into their inner palace. They were big men, tall, thick through the chest and shoulders, and at the peak of fitness. Not one of them, not even the tallest, came up to the chin of one of the lunar wolves. It was like fighting children. Well-armed children, it had to be said. Through the billowing smoke and the jarring detonations, Loken led the veteran first squad up the steps at a run. The palesteel soles of their boots grating on the stone. First squad, 10th Company, Hellbore Tactical Squad, gleaming giants in pearl-white armour, the wolf head insignia stark black on their auto-responsive shoulder plates. Crossfire zigzagged around them from the defended gates ahead. The night air shimmered with the heat of distortion of weapons discharge. Some kind of upright automated mortar was casting a sluggish, flaccid stream of fat mutation charges over their heads. "Kill it," Lorcan heard, a language that the lunar wolves had preserved as their battle tongue. The battle brother carrying the squad's plasma cannon obeyed without hesitation. For a dazzling half-second, a 20-metre ribbon of light linked the muzzle of his weapon to the auto-mortar, and then the device engulfed the facade of the palace in a roasting wash of yellow flame. Dozens of enemy soldiers were cast down by the blast. Several were thrown up into the air, landing crumpled and boneless on the flight of steps. Into them, Jubal barked. Wildfire chipped and pattered off their armour. Loken felt the distant sting of it. Brother Calden's stumbled and fell, but righted himself again almost at once. Loken saw the enemies scatter away from their charge. He swung his bolter up. His weapon had a gash in the metal of the forge tip, hit the legacy of a greenskin's axe during Ulanor, a cosmetic mark Loken had told the armourers not to finish out. He began to fire, not on burst, but on single shot, feeling the weapon buck and kick against his palms. Bolter rounds were explosive penetrators. The men he hit popped like blisters, or shredded like bursting fruit. Pink mist fumed off every ruptured figure as it fell. 10th Company, he shouted, for the War Master! The war cry was still unfamiliar, just another aspect of the newness. It was the first time Loken had declaimed it in war, the first chance he'd had since the honour had been bestowed by the Emperor after Ulanor. But the Emperor, the true Emperor, Lupercal, the wolves yelled back as they streamed in, choosing to answer with the old war cry, the Legion's pet name for their beloved commander. The war horns of the Titans boomed. They stormed the palace. Loken paused by one of the induction gates, urging his front-runners in, carefully reviewing the advance of his company's main force. Hellish fire continued to rake them from the upper balconies and towers. In the far distance, a brilliant dome of light suddenly lifted into the sky, astonishingly bright and vivid. Loken's visor automatically dimmed, the ground trembled, and a noise like a thunderclap reached him. A capital ship of some size, stricken and ablaze, had fallen out of the sky and impacted the outskirts of the high city. Drawn by the flash, the phototropic towers high above him fidgeted and rotated. Reports flooded in. Axeman's force, 5th Company, had secured the Regency and the pavilions of the ornamental lakes to the west of the high city. Torgadon's men were driving up through the lower town, slaying the armour that sent to block them. Loken looked east, 3 kilometres away, across the flat plain of the basalt platforms, across the tide of changing men and striding titans, and stitching fire. Abaddon's company, 1st Company, was crossing the bulwarks into the far flank of the palace. Loken magnified his view, resolving hundreds of white armoured figures pouring through the smoke and chop fire. At the front of them, the dark figures of 1st Company's foremost Terminator squad. They were polished, black armour as dark as night, as if they belonged to some other Black Legion. Loken to 1st, he sent, 10th as entry. There was a pause, a brief distort, then Abaddon's voice answered, Loken, are you trying to shame me with your diligence? Not for a moment, 1st Captain, Loken replied. There was a strict hierarchy of respect within the Legion, and though he was a senior officer, Loken regarded the peerless 1st Captain with awe. Though Torgadon had always favoured Loken with genuine shows of friendship, now Sejanus was gone, Loken thought, the aspect would soon change. I'm playing with you, Loken, Abaddon sent his voice so deep that some vowel sounds were blurred by the vox. I'll meet you at the feet of this false emperor. First one gets to illuminate him. Loken fought back a smile. Abaddon had seldom sported with him before. He felt blessed, elevated. To be the chosen man was enough, but to be with the favourite, that was every captain's dream. Reloading, Loken entered the palace through the induction gate, stepping over the tangled corpses of the enemy dead. The plaster facings of the inner walls had been cracked and blown down, and loose crumbs like dry sand crunched under his feet. The air was full of smoke, and his visor display kept jumping from one register to another as it attempted to compensate and get a clean reading. He moved down the inner hall, hearing the echo of gunfire from deeper in the palace compound. The body of a brother lay slumped in a doorway to his left, the large, white, armoured corpse, odd and out of place among the smaller enemy bodies. Marjax, one of the Legion's apothecaries, was bending over him. He glanced up as Loken approached and shook his head. Who is it? Loken asked. Tybor, of 2nd Squad, Marjax replied. Loken frowned as he saw the devastating head wound that had stopped Tybor. The Emperor knows his name, Loken said. Marjax nodded and reached into the Narthekium to get the reductor tool. He was about to remove Tybor's precious gene seed so that it might be returned to the Legion banks. Loken left the apothecary to his work and pushed on down the hill. In a wide colonnade ahead, the towering walls were decorated with frescoes, showing familiar scenes of a haloed emperor upon a golden throne. How blind these people are, Loken thought. How sad this is. One day, one single day with the iterators, and they would understand. We are not the enemy. We are the same, and we bring with us a glorious message of redemption. Old night is done. Man walks the stars again, and the might of the Astartes walks at the side to keep him safe. In a broad sloping tunnel of etched silver, Loken caught up with the elements of the 3rd Squad. All of the units in his company, 3rd Squad, was his favourite and his favoured. Its commander, Brother Sergeant Nero Vipus, was the oldest and truest friend. How's your humour, Captain? Vipus asked. His pearl-white plate was smudged with soot and streaked with blood. Phlegmatic, Nero, you? Red-raged, in fact. I've just lost a man, and 2 more of mine are injured. There's something covering the junction ahead, something heavy, rate of fire like you wouldn't believe. Tried fragging it? 2 or 3 grenades, no effect. And there's nothing to see. Garvey said we've heard all about these so-called invisibles, the ones that butchered Sir Janus. I was wondering, leave the wondering to me, Loken said. Who's down? Vipers shrugged. He was a little taller than Loken, and his shrug made the heavy ribbing and the plates of his armour clink together. Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus? No, torn into shreds before my very eyes. Oh, I feel the hand of the ship on me, Garvey. Hand of the ship. An old saying. The commander's flagship was called the Vengeful Spirit, and in times of duress or loss the wolves liked to draw upon all that implied as a charm, a totem of retribution. In Zacchaeus' name, Viper growled. I'll find this bastard invisible. Soothe your choler, brother. I've no use for it, Loken said. See to your wounded while I take a look. Vipers nodded and redirected his men, and Loken pushed up past them to the disputed junction. It was a vault route crossways, where 4 hallways met, the area red cold and still to his imagining, fading between chewed and peppered with thousands of impact craters. Brother Zacchaeus, his body as yet unretrieved, lay in pieces at the centre of the crossway, a steaming pile of shattered white plasteel and bloody meat. Vipers had been right. There was no sign of an enemy present, no heat trace, not even a flicker of movement, but studying the area, Loken saw a heap of empty shell cases, glittering brass, that had spilled out from behind the bulkhead across from him. Was that where the killer was hiding? Loken bent down and picked up a chunk of fallen plasterwork. He lobbed it into the open. There was a click, and then a hammering deluge of auto fire raked across the junction. It lasted 5 seconds, and in that time over 1,000 rounds were expended. Loken saw the fuming shell cases spitting out from behind the bulkhead as they were ejected. The firing stopped. Vapour fogged the junction. The gunfire had scored a mottled gouge across the stone floor, pummeling Zacchaeus' corpse in the process. Spots of blood and scraps of tissue had been spattered out. Loken waited. He heard a whine and the metallic clunk of an autoloader system. He read weapon heat fading, but no body warmth. Won a medal yet? Vipers asked, approaching. It's just an automatic sentry gun, Loken replied. Well, that's a small relief at least, Vipers said. After the grenades, we've pitched in that direction. I was beginning to wonder if these vaunted invisibles might be invulnerables too. I'll call up a devastator support to... Just give me a light flare, Loken said. Vipers stripped one off his leg plate and handed it to his captain. Loken ignited it with a twist of his hand and threw it down the hallway opposite. It bounced fizzing, glaring white-hot past the hidden killer. There was a grind of servos. The implacable gunfire began to roar down the corridor at the flare, kicking it and bouncing it, ripping into the floor. Gavry, Vipers began. Loken was running. He crossed the junction, thumping his head against the bulkhead. The gun was still blazing. He wheeled around the bulkhead and saw the sentry gun, built into an alcove, a squat machine set on 4 pad feet and heavily plated. It had turned its short, fat pumping cannons away from him to fire on the distant flickering flare. Loken reached over and tore out a handful of its servo flexes. The gun stuttered and died. We're clear, Loken called out. Lacosta moved up. That's generally called showing off, Vipers remarked. Loken led Lacosta up the corridor and they entered a fine state apartment. Other apartment chambers, similarly regal, beckoned beyond. It was oddly still and quiet. Which way now? Vipers asked. We go find this emperor, Loken said. Vipers snorted. Just like that. The first captain bet me I couldn't reach him first. The first captain, eh? Since when was Garvey or Loken on pally terms with him? Since 10th breached the palace ahead of first. Don't worry, Nero. I'll remember you little people when I'm famous. Nero Vipers laughed, the sound snuffling out of his helmet like the cough of a consumptive bull. What happened next didn't make either of them laugh at all. Well, that was rather dramatic. Anyway, there we go. That's part 1. Part 2 is titled Meeting the Invisibles at the Foot of the Golden Throne and Lupercal. I hope that was okay. Hope I didn't butcher it too much. The next read I do will be chapter 1 of The Hobbit, just because, for those of you that know, if you know, you know, this is going to take a while. But we'll do alternating weeks. But I do hope that was all right. I don't really know what to say, to be honest. You've probably stopped listening by now, but if you are still listening, I only employ you one time to do all of those things you need to do to please support my tiny channel. And I hope to see you in the next video. Fingers crossed for The Hobbit. We'll be going on an adventure.